certain way people that kill people behave. And there's certain things you look for. It's not all telltale, but sometimes you just get a feeling. Running from the police from a murder. When they finally get arrested, they're brought down to the homicide office and they get stuck in the box, which is the interview room. They have a tendency to kind of just ball up and just feel like they're done. It's a sense of relief. And he's crying, or she is crying.
What are you doing, man?
The emotion is spilling out of him.
I'm their killer.
You might need to give that thing another look.
You put me in the box and I know I didn't do anything, I'm banging on the door one time.
Okay, don't forget about our missing girls here. They're still missing. Welcome to Talking News, Chasing a Murder. My name is Debbie, and guys, I want to ask you to please subscribe and like this moment so you don't forget. If you don't like it, you can unlike it later. But guys, this really helps us out. Right now, we're going to go into Connecting the Dots, Part 6. This is based off the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case, and it really got started whenever two children went missing by the name of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. They belong to Lori Vallow. And guys, I want to kind of bring something else into this before we get started into the timeline. So it's going to be a quick overview on Chad and Lori. So Chad Daybell, he's a sexton in his early life who writes books about grave digging and what that's like. He is married to a beautiful woman by the name of Tammy, and he has dreams of running his own book publishing company. Chad's wife Tammy is the backbone of all of his success when it comes to the book publishing company. Chad has 100% support from his family and his children, who are raised in a different kind of belief system, and that's actually attached to their Mormon teachings. It strays miles away from the true teachings of Jesus Christ, though. But like all children, they are who they are based off who raises them, at least until they are able to, get a mind of their own. In 2015, Chad moves from Utah to Rexburg after a spirit guides him there. He and Tammy bring their 5 children as well as their newly built Springfield Book Company. Suzanne Freeman is one of Chad's first authors that he takes on, and she said that she was impressed with Tammy Daybell's running of this company. She said Chad and Tammy were really good people, and she really likes meeting good folks. During her time hanging out with Chad and his family, she said Tammy was his soulmate, that he had said this multiple times. And according to Miss Freeman, it's not long and Chad begins to have strange ideas, events, and teachings. It really starts one day when he calls or talks to his friend Julie Rowe. Chad tells her that he has an out-of-body experience at his Rexburg home. His kids and his wife are there to witness it. He's still in his house as his spirit is looking at his own body. Then his spirit goes back into his body. So these are just a few of the things that his family witnessed, and his kids 100% are believers, which makes sense. They go with everything questionable, especially the events in his life shortly after this. According to Julie, it's at this time that Chad really changes and begins talking about past lives. Chad Daybell believes that he is a prophet-like leader, and he is speaking with other Doomsday preppers all over the USA. So many of them begin to move to the Rexburg area, admitting that they come there to follow Chad. And during this time, Chad's books are growing, and now this group has a network, and it's like a family. It's growing pretty big. Take a listen to this.
Share that with you.
So we are really excited to have Chad. Chad's one of
my favorite people. In fact, he used to be in Springville, and then we followed him to Rexburg. Yeah.
Chad is connecting with the real estate salesmen in area, visionaries, media specialists, even small filmmakers. And he's using all these guys and their skills to build a group with all having one thing in common, and that's the end days, the second coming of Jesus Christ. So now many of these believers are moving to the Rexburg area, and his neighbors are more like followers than neighbors. It appears, based on their belief system, that there's more like a cult brewing, and they're trying to organize it to where it's a very well working system. So I want to show you a clip where Chad is making a calling and a prediction of where their group will be safest. And in that video, he says, standing at the podium, quote, "Nothing bad will ever happen in that stretch of land," end quote. And he states that the people that will live on this property, which you'll see shortly, will prosper until the second coming of Jesus Christ. Here's that clip.
Something when they say, well, what did you hear? What did they tell you? And so I'm going to give a statement that you can share with them. Okay? And so what I say is from Brigham City to Santaquin, it's like a special plate of land that will never be destroyed. Nothing bad will ever happen in that stretch of land. And that the people will prosper until the second coming without any trouble.
Now, at some point, Chad seems to expand this up to Rexburg, Idaho. I continue to research to find out when and if this is true. At this point, he's saying this very safe land extends from Brigham City to Santaquin, Utah. So Chad meets a lot of people connected to this LDS church. One of those people he draws in is, like I mentioned, Lori Vallow, a married mom of 3. And when she and Melanie Boudreau drive up to an event, they speak with Chad, and Chad tells her that they were married before in past lives and that they were great leaders for the Mormon people. It's really that point that Chad starts to develop a pretty deep relationship with Lori Vallow. It's not platonic. It's not professional. It is an affair that ends up growing stronger and stronger. Now, most of us know about this, that around the end of September of 2019, 3 weeks before Tammy's death, Julie Rowe, a friend of Chad, tells her, he says, quote, "My plan can't move forward until Tammy's dead," end quote. According to a YouTube video, Julie says that Chad says this in a very frustrated voice. A lot of people say that Chad and Lori both were getting impatient, that they could not make their lives together quick enough. But Chad isn't the only one making big changes. And this timeline around 2017 to 2019, Annie Cushion, an ex-sister-in-law from her Ryan marriage, notices that Lori Vallow has strange outlooks on life coming to surface. Annie says she comes to visit Lori back in 2018, shortly after her brother Joseph Ryan died. This is because Lori asked her to. And she asked her to so that she can be supportive to Joseph Ryan's daughter, Tylee Ryan. According to Annie, when she shows up back in May of 2018, she is in Lori's home talking with Lori about end times. And she says that Lori tells her that she is afraid and mentions that sometimes it would be easier to drive herself and her children off a cliff. When Annie hears this is a disturbing statement to hear. And it's at that point that she realizes that Lori might not be in the right mind. So it just seems that Chad and Lori show signs that they have illusions, they're disconnected, and that their support of death and end times are signs that they are mentally struggling to stay in reality. What started off as simple religious beliefs take a turn to the dark place, where dark ideas manifest and grow. It grows into many suspicious events happening around them, including 2 spouses 6 foot under, 2 missing kids, and then they are married just a matter of weeks after Chad's wife, Tammy, passes away. And she passed away under suspicious circumstances. They married, and when I say they, Chad and Lori married November 5th, a very quick change in both of their lives, especially considering their recent losses of their own spouses, which both were married to for years. Strange events continue, and by the end of November, police are asking questions. And that's November 2019. So here we're going to go into a little bit of a recap. We learned a lot of information in November about this case, and how the timeline showed an element of surprise for Lori and Chad when police suddenly show up at their doorstep. So we learned through close friends of Chad and Lori, Daybell, that he might be the leader of this group referred to as a cult. Some even say that they might be followers of Satan. And there's also rumors out there that he was even suspected to be building a private society. But there's no solid information on the last few that I mentioned. I would lean more toward a cult than anything else. It reminds me of the Charlie Manson story, guys. And in my opinion, it is darker than the Charles Manson, and this is why. On the Charlie Manson case, he directed the group of women that were following him to kill strangers. They killed people that they had no attachments to. Not only that, they were heavily and majorly intoxicated with mind-altering drugs. This means that they were not fully engaged with their mind and heart. In Chad's group, the LDS our branch that shoots off from the LDS, friends claim that Chad is the leader, is in charge of who are zombies and who should die. And if these accusations are true, it would be he, Chad, who calls Lori's husband Charles a zombie. And he was, well, killed a short while later after being called a zombie. It was Chad who then marked her own 2 children, Tylee and JJ, her own flesh and blood, whom she nurtured and loved for years, Tylee and JJ, zombies. And there's something I want to share about the comparison to Charles Manson. And like I mentioned, they were on drugs and they were slaughtering people they didn't know. Whereas with the LDS, the main teaching, they are taught to be completely sober to avoid drugs and alcohol. Meaning that they were well aware of the serious directions and steps that they were taking, and are in fact 100% walking in reality. So that makes it scarier, or the scariest of all, because they are hurting people they love and they know and that are close to them and sober. So they know exactly what they're doing. And what a lot of people point out is not one zombie was on Chad's side of the family. So why is it that there are only zombies in Lori's life? Well, if we remember right, Lori mentions that Satan is after her more than most. I wonder where she learned that. That would be important, wouldn't it, prosecutor? Now, who else is involved with this? Well, Lori Vallow's brother, Alex Cox, is there, and he proved that he can lie, and he can lie for the cause. Now, Melanie Boudreau, which is Lori's niece, is busy coaxing her own husband into this world that Chad is luring them into. But she denies that she has any part of that, which everybody knows is a lie. Now, we know several of these people, but there are other people that are drawn into this. And one of those people, her name is Zulema. Zulema was married a few times, and she had a 25-year-old son living with her at West Picasso Street in Maricopa, Arizona. She was close friends with Lori Vallow, although I'm not certain how long because I haven't got that far into my research. Zulema is in her late 50s. She claims that she comes from an abusive background and uses this abuse in the past as her teacher. She says she has pushed her victimhood to the back and says that she took a different route in her life. She even says she takes part of the blame for her failures in her life, but continues to struggle with her past. And what a past does she have? Especially in 1998. In 7/10 of 1998, she is arrested for drug use. In 8/98, she is caught with meth in her possession. And in September, about the 15th of 1998, she is arrested for drug paraphernalia. Here we are about 20 years later. After her arrest, she tries to walk in a different light. Around April 2017, she is part of a women's empowerment summit, and it lasts about 37 weeks. She struggles with drugs and depression, and she uses her religious beliefs to find peace and a brighter life. She becomes a life coach and reaches out on how to get out of this victimhood that she calls victimhood to victory. She begins to join these groups and create groups such as Earth Day, which she says she runs free. Then she has a few that she charges for. Another one of them groups is called Phoenix Love and Personal Development, which she claims has 615 members, but she never has a full class. According to her, there's 2 free groups a week. She runs several groups. Her teachings grow into something that not many people are aware of. Also, she is a faithful LDS member, but she likes to follow her own rules and ideas of what is right and how these belief systems work to her advantage. From there, she has given herself the title of self-possessed emotional code practitioner. She listed also in other services, which is called cuddling services, in one of her profiles. So here is an online detail of herself. Zulema Pastenes. She helps facilitate massive change in the lives of those wanting to increase their true awareness of self. She created the Love and Personal Development group on Meetup and holds weekly meetings that help transform lives. Every week, she speaks to the heart and soul of individuals desperate for love and connection. This is interesting. Through her training, classes, and private coaching, her participants leave knowing that they are loved and there is a divine power working magic in their lives. Ooh, that sounds almost Harry Potter-ish, guys. But she claims to be a healer, a visionary, many of those things that Chad claims as well. Okay, guys, you're going to have to excuse the background noise. That banging is that little adorable puppy that you see pictures of in the community section. She is more than a handful. I would have to say more than our true live human infant. I love her so much, though, and I want to show you guys some pictures because we had a lot of ups and downs with her. So back to Zulema. She has magical powers, guys. Not saying that I don't believe in people who claim that they have had some type of vision and they've come true. I'm not at all shunning all people like this, but as you know, there are many people out there that are very fake, and they do these things for themselves. They want the attention from it. They're not doing it to help others. So all of this is signs that she is the one controlling who she wants to be and doesn't like to follow common rules. She is very persistent and confident, and she has the healing powers, but however, guys, oftentimes these types call on groups who prey on the weak to better themselves and to make themselves feel worthy, and I call them con artists. In reality, it isn't about you. It's about them. They build this world for them. They get these rewards from doing these great things, supposedly for you. These free groups that they run, there's no proof that anybody's ever done anything that has helped anybody build free houses, give them food, put shirts on their back. While we have seen Chad Daybell give to the Goodwill, he likes to walk in and look like this glamorous giver. But in all reality, the story will tell the truth once we reach the end. I think what I find kind of laughable, and not that, somebody doesn't deserve cuddles or hugs when they charge for this stuff. So when I found out that she did this thing where she offers, if I can speak, cuddles, it's at that point that I realized that she will do anything to take advantage of anybody's weakness in order to, make money or whatever she's doing. Worst of all, she finds God and uses him as a way to bring positive into her life. She says, quote, "As a human, we want to control," end quote. But she asked God for the vision to walk the right path, which, in my opinion, one who asks for somebody's help, first they have to listen and then walk the path that they have laid out and quit making your own path. Anyhow, even in her protective bubble of glory and good, she is drawn back to the abuse that she tried to escape. Is it by chance, or is she drawn to the dark that she tries so hard to deny? And we're speaking about her soon-to-come marriage. Through her desires, teachings, and God, she meets Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. It isn't known if she is aware of the dark road this family walks, but it doesn't matter. She walks it with them for a period of time. Where is Zulema during this? Alex Cox, Lori's brother, is preparing to get hitched to a woman who claims to be one of the elements of Earth. Let me reword that. She claims to be able to control elements of Earth too. Okay, one second, guys. It's very hard to record for this new little angel. Here's an example why. Okay, back on the subject. Oh, so guys, in this part of the timeline, this part of the video, November, there are threesome marriages. Not that getting married is uncommon, but in this case, it is suspicious. And I'm about to share why. So, it seems at this point of the timeline where we're going to pick up, investigators are onto Lori and are very suspicious about the whereabouts of JJ, Lori's adopted 7-year-old son. As if odd events like shootings, deaths, and sudden marriages wasn't hard enough to follow, strange events keep piling up around this very strange group and their beliefs. Again, I feel it's very important that we have this straight, that Chad Daybell has convinced Lori that her family are all zombies and that Melanie Gibb is right by her side that entire time and seems to support these ideas. However, during that time, Melanie later says that she really never believed in the zombies. And in fact, it wasn't until the last minute Melanie Gibb talks to a friend trying to convince herself that zombies are not real. And in my very humble opinion, she was doing what she can to disconnect from the event she knows could land all of them in jail. What is this event or this thing happening that could land them in jail, you say? It has to do with the missing innocent little boy, JJ, the zombie. You see, all seems to be okay with this group until police get involved. That is where it, places these things of doubts, for me at least. Listen, this group makes money. It gets jobs based off of nonsense, in my opinion. Every day they deal with people questioning their ideas. Dealing with naysayers is something that they deal with all the time. They dealt with this their entire lives. They will stare you straight in the face when they tell their so-called stories, facts, and beliefs. And I have witnessed multiple times them lying. And the fact that I see one of them, I'm not going to say who it is because some people don't like you talking about her like that, but she gets the camera on and she gets really excited. And then if you corner her, she is able to act the emotions she should have. But in all reality, what I find is that none of them have any remorse for anything that's happened. They are so narcissistic that they believe that they are on God's side and that they have a superior relationship with Him. Not saying this to down them, but to help you understand where they're coming from and why they act the way that they do. Sometimes I wonder if they ever believe in God at all, or are they just use God to manipulate and gain to advance in their own lives. And of course, we have all taken a guess at their true intentions. We all have had different ideas, but one thing's true. They are all selfish and they all crave and desire greatness. Truly, they could care less about others, and this in itself sets them far away from good or even God. The difference between them and people who they compare themselves to, like Jesus, is Jesus was a good person. Good people sacrifice themselves for others, just as Jesus did on the cross. I don't see sacrifice. I see them taking lives, taking someone's joy, taking someone's loved ones, money, insurance, vehicles, homes, and their time here on earth. Definitely, they have not sacrificed anything for anyone but themselves. And what we're about to go over is going to be a great example of a story that should most likely be in a Bible. It could be a great story for this book of who not to be or how not to live for God or Jesus. These people let greed and Satan trick them into self-indulgence and personal needs instead of caring for, put simply, the people around them. Other friends of theirs are suffering from the same need. They just vary person to person based on their desires. Whether it is to be a great leader, a great visionary, a great author, etc., they are all walking side by side of this lost adversary on roads all leading to the dark place, in my opinion, guys. That's my opinion. And so friends like Melanie Gibb, she is leading and living by Jesus Christ's teaching, yet not one teaching of Jesus Christ has ever come from her adversary. While the people like Chad and Lori and others in this group, their mouths speak biblical verses, but their actions display something totally different. Most people describe their actions to be quite sinister and evil, and that's opposite of good. I remember when somebody first suggested that we cover this story, And I remember taking a glance at it and thinking, my God, this is so difficult to even grasp a hold of, you know, to get the idea of what is really going on. So I actually did take this on, start researching it, but my gosh. And guys, I got really emotionally wrapped up into this like a lot of us did. So November, Melanie Gibb, which is part of the Preparing the People and Friends Lori and Chad, is spending the holidays with her boyfriend David Warwick. She left her husband not long ago, as well as her children, for this particular guy. We will hear Melanie quick to, shove Lori's affair in her face, but we don't hear about her. Meanwhile, the Daybell's children lose a mother to suspicious events. A friend talks with his children, and a few are struggling with what has happened in their lives, which is involving their father, Chad. This friend that I'm speaking about is Julie Rowland. She gives me mixed feelings a lot of times. She says that she suspects that the kids are lied to. She says that Chad Daybell had predicted his late wife's death, and he had brainwashed his children. Here we go. I have a quote here. Quote, "I believe that he has done some brainwashing with them. I believe that he is still using them." End quote. And it's not often that I agree with Julie, but I have to say that she has hit the nail on the head on this one. Of course, we're not in the room when Chad speaks to his children, so it's not clear what Chad is telling his children. But since he is living this very open life as a great visionary, you can probably guess. He is filling their innocent heads at a very young age with this nonsense. And guys, I apologize. I've gotten a little bit personal on this one. So it must be very difficult for those kids to suddenly come aware that your dad is a fake and a liar to boot. Their future actions in this case will have you wondering about one of them, guys. And I'm talking about one of his children. Her name is Emma, Chad's pride and joy, and often featured in many of his books. So you have to remember that these kids are surrounded by like-minded folks their entire lives. So this is normal for them. And my heart actually goes out to Chad's kids. I mean, whether or not they're doing questionable things right now, I understand how they were raised and what they've been through and why they are like they are. And I believe that someday that they will, be able to figure out and think for themselves what's true. Now, I have seen where one of his sons seemed to struggle some with this case, and only the future will, tell of how he's going to be able to handle this. Now, I want to start speaking about Melanie again and the guy that she is dating and starts dating November 20th, Ian Pawlowski. Ian's talking to his friends probably right before November and told them that he was ready to get back to dating and meeting people. He is living in the Rexburg area at the time. And I believe it's sometime over the summer, if I might have this wrong, guys, that he finally, the divorce is done and over with. This is about the same time that Melanie Boudreau asked Brandon Boudreau for a divorce. According to Ian, he says when he started dating, it wasn't his goal to get married so quickly. He really had trouble dealing with the divorce from his wife. And the two of them have two beautiful children together. So he's going through a rough divorce himself. It's hard on him. He is trying hard to put his life back together. He was looking for a bit of validation, he said, and just someone to talk to that wouldn't judge him or push him away. And to me, these are huge clues that he is incredibly lonely and scared of his self-worth. Like I mentioned, he meets Melanie Boudreau, recently divorced as well, on one of the dating apps on his phone for Mormons. He asked her out, and he is excited about the fact Melanie wanted to get to know him. So for 2 days straight, they talked constantly. This is around November 20th through the 22nd of 2019. He says he doesn't have to perform mental gymnastics to justify a second, third, or fourth date. He is so comfortable with Melanie that he brings his own children to her townhome around the very people who have children disappearing and strange sudden deaths on every side. And in my own research, I come to realize that he is clearly blinded by love, not realizing the risk to his own children. And I'm not saying he is a bad person. I'm just saying he's quite desperate. And everybody likes to feel loved. So the irony here is, Ian says one of the reasons he asked her to marry him so quickly was his children and her children, but mainly his children. If it were you or me, that would be the number one reason to not marry Melanie. But Ian is not aware of everything happening until just a day or two before he married her. Most people would see that red flag and find out the truth before placing their children into this crazy environment. Despite being responsible, despite all the warnings and flags, he acts irrationally, but he doesn't see it that way. And how many times have we ever heard with relationships, a mother and a father always puts their children first? He cannot see where this marriage is not for anyone's advantage but his own. And what should have really given him the clue is the fact that Melanie Boudreau's own father is helping her ex-husband protect their 4 children from her and her family. So this says quite a lot. And it should have definitely meant something to Ian too. Sadly, it doesn't. At Melanie's townhome, she says she has 1 extra bedroom, but I never found out how many bedrooms she had. But if there were 3, who are in these bedrooms? Possibly Alex Cox, but we do hear that Ian does allow him and himself to stay at her house. Maybe he's sleeping in a separate room, I just don't know. So anyways, okay, so how in the world did Melanie end up following them? We all know this story, but there's a few people that don't really know it, so I'm going to put a brief summary in that as well. According to Melanie, Lori tells her niece Melanie Boudreau to come up to Idaho and try out something new because she's going through a divorce. But they don't know that we know that they're recruiting for the preppers group. So they have several people that follow them there. Now we're working on this timeline again, guys. So on the 26th, we know that cops show up from part 5 to Lori Vallow's townhome, where the police run into her brother and Chad Daybell, her husband. Her husband tries to pretend that he doesn't know his own wife and doesn't realize that police know that they're married. Eventually, cops are able to obtain Lori's phone number. They reach out to her, but are never able to reach her by phone until way later that evening. And Lori talks to the cops and detectives, and luckily they had their body cam on, and tells them several lies of where JJ might be. And here's a clip of that.
I'm Lieutenant Ball, Police Department. How are you? You got a minute? You all alone, or that help?
My brother's here.
Okay. This is Detective Stubbs. Hello.
Police begin to announce why they're there, and she jumps in.
He was just saying that he wanted to do a well check on JJ.
So JJ would be where?
He's in Arizona.
If you listen close, Lori Vallow starts to panic at one point in this, and you can tell that she's absolutely lying.
Who's the friend he's with?
My friend Melanie. Her son has autism. Her name's Melanie Gibb. I gave him all the information on the phone.
Okay, so he can call him?
Yeah.
Perfect. Discord.
Yeah. What is all this?
We're a little concerned
Right.
because, well, the officers who were here earlier
Yeah.
were checking, and they got a bad vibe that, like, something was going on here because Nobody knew anything about a job. They weren't talking.
It's because a lot of stuff was going on. If you want to know, it's a lot of stuff. So.
Well, that's why we're concerned, because it just was kind of weird.
It is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me.
So you heard where she tried to blame that her brother was trying to kill her, and that she had found where they were all conspiring against her online somehow, or on a computer. But you can tell definitely as you listen closer and you watch Kay too, you can tell that Lori's absolutely scared to death. Not only that, she admits that Alex is like a bodyguard for her, a protector.
The brother that lives here, obviously, he's kind of my protector. My other brother that was in with my husband, who was trying to kill me for my $2 million life insurance.
No.
So a lot of stuff has gone on in this last year. It's been a horrible year for us. I've had to move around. And so I was going to move back to Arizona, put my son back into the school there, because I tried to put him in school here, public school in Kennedy.
Okay.
He went for 2 months. We tried it, but he had such a hard time. Now, the person who called is my...
So clearly the detective is playing good cop, bad cop here. Also, I wish they had on this next part where she starts to talk about his sister-in-law, Kay, would have asked her to prove to them where she threatened them.
Sister-in-law, but she's his natural grandmother. He's adopted by us. Okay, so her son, who is a drug addict, had a baby with a girl who's a drug addict, and they took him from, CPS took him.
Okay.
Gave him to the grandmother. She came and got him, and then she wanted us to adopt him, which we did. And we loved him.
By us? Who are we talking
my
about?
husband and I, who died earlier this year.
Okay.
He passed away. Since he passed away, she's been trying to fight me for him and being really horrible to me and that kind of stuff. She's kind of the paternal friend.
Okay, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
That's what I mean. The paternal grandmother.
He has autism and ADHD. He doesn't really talk to people. Like he's very special needs. So I have.
So Lori evidently, even under stress, is able to maintain her present tense with JJ.
Switched his life insurance policy to her, right? To his sister, who got $1 million when he died, and we got nothing. For me to raise JJ, and all the kids got nothing, and everybody got nothing. She got $1 million. So I knew she was going to try to sue me for him, or
JJ?
Yeah, because she now has this $1 million, so she can hire people to help him, and I have nothing.
But you have legal custody.
He's my son. I adopted him when
Right.
he was 2 years. We had him from the time he was 8 months old till 2 years old. So she does nothing who wants to cause me trouble. So I don't tell people the truth about where we are and what we're doing because of those reasons. So I look like a suspect, but I am not a good person.
Interestingly, there she mentions, I may look like a suspect. Suspect to what? This is something that she didn't mean to come out of her mouth, and that's clear, but that's something that should have tipped detectives off big time.
Raised all of my kids. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do in life, but everyone is causing me trouble right now. So
We don't want to cause a lot of trouble. How long?
So you can clearly hear her playing the damsel in distress. She is the victim. But remember, guys, don't forget, try applying opposite day.
You been here?
we've only been here since September.
Okay.
We moved up here in September. My daughter to go to BYUI.
Your daughter goes to BYU?
Yeah.
Does she live here?
So it's been a nightmare, but I'm going to go back to Arizona so I can put him back in the special needs school. He couldn't do the school here. It was too hard for him. He would scream and cry, take him to school. The principal would have to come out, try to drag him out of the car. It's too hard.
Okay, guys, I have to apologize. I did a switch in environment, but did you hear her? She gives you a clue and maybe a motive as to why JJ disappeared. She just claims that he's so hard to handle and to get to school, and it's just hard. And to me, that's an important statement that she makes there. So let's continue.
But I just don't tell people where I am. I don't tell her where I am ever.
Okay.
And she doesn't have any legal rights to anything. She's been horrible to me since my husband died.
My understanding, she never called to try to get the child, you know, hey, I'm interested in the child back, you know, but that.
I know, but she sends me these emails with like the dates and like she's putting up court stuff, you know, like just documenting. I haven't heard from him in all this time, and so I've told her that he's fine. But
See, and we hadn't heard any of that as far as.
I'm just saying she's doing this as part of that. Yeah. Is my understanding.
And our only concern in this whole thing
is that he's fine.
Is the child.
I got it.
And so that's where we're at on the. And then
so
we were just a little weirded out when. You know, and I understand now that we've heard your side of the story.
It's awful. I feel like I'm being tracked all the time. I'm like, why are police coming to my door? What did I do?
They said they were out visiting with two guys, and I assume one's your brother?
Who was visiting? Yeah.
So this is interesting to me. We know that Chad later admitted that, you know, or knows that the police know that they're married. But they talked to Lori later. And so Lori doesn't seem to realize this. And she continued to go with that story with police, which makes you wonder if it was conspired. That Chad is a friend of her brother.
Who was the other one? The other guy they were visiting with. There were two. Well, we had two detectives over here trying to.
Looking for you a little while ago.
Oh, because I was at the store.
And they ran into. Well, probably one of your brothers.
My brother and his friend, probably.
Oh, who's that?
Moving. Chad.
Chad from around here? Mm-hmm. What's his last name? Well, okay. All right.
It's just a mess that is constantly causing me trouble.
Chad D-A-Y-B-E-L-L?
Mm-hmm. He's an author.
Doesn't he live like out in the... Isn't that the Chad Daybell that... Hey, his wife passed away recently. Is that him?
I don't know.
But it is. Chad D-A-Y-B-E-L-L.
But it sounds familiar as an author.
I think I know one of his. Has he got a couple of daughters?
He has lots of kids.
Yeah. But it's safe. All right. Well, maybe anything else? Sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We don't mean to be a problem.
I'm sorry that people are constantly knocking at my door looking for me, and I just don't want to be found, so.
Have you had problems? Because I think we've only had.
If you notice, Lori really doesn't lie. She goes a roundabout way of telling them stuff. She kind of makes up stories and kind of flips reality around a little bit. For some reason, she thinks that makes it okay. However, she tells them flat out that she just don't want to be found, and that's what she's absolutely trying to do. So she does tell the truth. You just got to listen closer. And so we learn the 26th of November, the police get no answers about JJ's whereabouts. They try to reach Lori. It becomes difficult. Lori pushes the responsibility of JJ onto a friend called Melanie Gibb. And the Rexburg police, as well as the Gilbert police, do reach out to Melanie, but are not able to get an immediate contact with her. They even go out to her home to find out that she's not there. Now, guys, my timeline lacks in spaces, and this is one of them. So when they reach Melanie Gibb, I'm not certain, but it's sometime during, in between the 26th and the 27th. And she lied to the police. And I'm going to kind of stick this here for now. It's about over a week when police are trying to contact Melanie. And she ends up telling the police that she had not seen JJ since October. Same thing Chad says. But according to Melanie, she claims that she denied Chad and Lori's request to lie and take pictures of JJ or a kid that looks like JJ and tell police that is JJ. So also, 2 nights before Thanksgiving, Lori's neighbor, we're going to call her SB, says that she saw Lori and her brother Alex packing up a truck. She says she thought they were traveling for the holiday. And Lori left behind a few belongings. And this, of according to that neighbor, she also left JJ's toys on her front porch. It's the next day, November 27th, and the Rexburg Police Department is asked to serve a search warrant at the request of the Arizona authorities. They were even able to log that a phone indicates or pings at the address of 565 Pioneer Road at the townhomes at that moment. They also said that the log was also indicated that the call related to the missing 7-year-old, now known to be JJ. When police arrive, they are there to serve a warrant, a search warrant. But they discover that the Daybells had abruptly left. Investigators search all 3 apartments belonging to Alex Cox, Lori Vallow, as well as her niece, Melanie Boudreau. In 175, police find a half-empty bottle of Risperidone that belongs to JJ. They find a suitcase with his name on it. Investigators say it appears that someone had been living there. There was food, furniture, and other items that suggest it might be a living home, except for one thing. The closets and dresser drawers in 175 were bare and empty. Inside, they find the rental agreement to Lori's storage unit. So again, this next day, they're continuing to search for the little boy, JJ. They obtain cell phone data and talk with other witnesses around the area. They speak with people like Melanie Boudreau, neighbors, friends, even Ian. And so I don't forget, I want to make sure this is about the point where the Rexburg and Gilbert start asking the FBI to help them out. They find out that 107 is vacant. There's no sign of anyone ever living there. And depending on who you talk to, this was the unit that Alex Cox, Lori brother, is supposed to live in. And so, speaking with all these family members and neighbors and stuff, police start to get a few concerns. But still, they kind of don't have an idea about Tylee. Police say that when they do contact Melanie, that she confirmed that Chad and Lori did leave town. Now remember, this is about the same time that Melanie Boudreau claims that she's driving herself to Ian's family's house, but she slips up in a few interviews, and she's done it more than once, saying that they both drove together. So I don't know if I believe her or not. Hermosillo says that on November 27th of 2019, a search warrant was obtained for the apartments 175, 174, and 107, and that this was for Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, and Melanie Boudreau. Though they had a warrant for JJ Vallow, the police were unaware of Tylee Ryan at the time. And what was very concerning to them mainly was in Unit 75, when police find a suitcase with JJ's name on it and a bottle of Risperidone, which is used to treat irritability, which is associated with his autism. It is a half-filled prescription bottle of about 17 pills, and it was last filled on January of 2019 in Arizona. It was never refilled in Idaho. And so this is concerning. You have this couple, they're leaving, and if JJ's not there, maybe JJ's with them. And if JJ's with them, why doesn't JJ have his medication? And why doesn't he have a suitcase? It's shortly after this, like I mentioned before, that they had searched Lori's unit, storage unit that she rented. And inside they find the kids' bikes and clothing and pictures. It's quite disturbing for people who are keeping up with this case, because it kind of said, something isn't right. Also, guys, we need to remember that Ian and his kids have spent a lot of time staying at Melanie's townhome. We never hear if they're ever questioned, but we can be sure that if JJ was there, he most likely would be very interested in hanging out with other children, because he seems to like to be very social with other kids. Around this time, police also raised concerns about significant financial resources of Vallow and her new husband, Chad Daybell. And later on, they believe that they used this money to help them evade police. So the police say that, quote, I'm aware that Chad Daybell received at least $430,000 in life insurance proceeds upon the death of his wife, Tammy. As such, Lori and Chad have resources significant to help them travel and hide from the law enforcement and the court. According to a few resources, it is said that Lori and Chad actually spent the Thanksgiving holidays with somebody, one of his family members, I think in California. So that's just rumor. But also on Thanksgiving, Melanie says, we are driving to Ian's family for Thanksgiving. Then quickly rephrases that she drove alone to the family's house for the holidays in Arizona. She says it's during that time that she gets a text from someone that says, quote, someone's broken into your house. I need you to call me right away, end quote. It's not long, and she figures out that this message is coming from Lieutenant Ball. Referring back to an interview that Melanie Boudreau did with East Idaho News, like if you watch her interviews, you'll notice that she likes to take that opportunity on public TV to make her ex and other people look bad. But the problem is she's slandering these people without any proof whatsoever. Melanie says when she received that text and she hears somebody's breaking into her house, that she suspects that it is her ex-husband Brandon Boudreau, who was shot at back in October, which is police are suspicious that it might be her uncle Alex and maybe even her. Then she goes to and begins her slanderous accusations, once again without proof, claiming that she believes it was Brandon Boudreau who most likely broke in because he had a private investigator following her. Although she says these awful things about Brandon and more about her ex-husband, he's never been caught doing such things or arrested. Not once has Brandon been connected to any of these very odd events happening around his family. However, she has been arrested, and she's been involved with questionable events and accusations. Again, opposite day, once again. In my research, it appears to me that her actions seem to follow her Aunt Lori almost perfectly. The way she likes to twist things around and place the blame on anybody but her. Melanie says she doesn't know what to text back to Lieutenant Ball. She had to process this information for her time. She even mentioned that she felt kind of bothered by the text. For an unknown period of time, she waits. And then she later texts the police back saying, quote, well, I'm with people I love on Thanksgiving. At least, that's what's important. Whatever the heck is taken, if my whole apartment is robbed, it's okay. I've got everything I need. It's not about things, end quote. It's not really certain what's going through her thought process at the moment, or if she even has an idea. Cops might find her very interesting because they were just looking for her the day before. What is very interesting is the fact that as they reach out to her, she seems to have no interest in the whereabouts of JJ. If it were your nephew, cops were concerned about it. Would you just up and disappear? Most aunts or uncles, well, would show concern about the whereabouts of their niece or nephew. However, what if you were involved? This might be a reason to say you're not worried because you know something. You know looking for them is just a waste of time. And if you knew something, you would show mild concern for the child's whereabouts. Now remember, Ian states that he cares about his kids and those kids, but his actions show otherwise. Anyways, the question is, how much did Ian know? That's what people want to know. He did say he wanted to help her get out of this mess. His main concern is Melanie, and that says a lot. When Melanie finally finds out that it was the Rexburg police who knocked down her door and that police used a warrant to confiscate several of Melanie Boudreau's personal belongings like a PC, tablet, etc., she seems more angry than she is concerned about the children. So this is a red flag. Now, Melanie is with Ian. And sometime during this period, she's having visionary dreams about her own children. But in an interview with Nate Eaton, she doesn't mention that at all. She tells Nate and the public that she's having nightmares. But Ian told us in documents that she wasn't having nightmares. She was having visionary dreams, and they were quite concerning. It's at that point that I realized Ian might not be such a dependable person to rely on. He obviously is supporting the lies and helping her hide the visionary episodes, portals, and the complete truth. Also, on November 27th of 2019, 2 detectives visit Lori's oldest son, Colby Ryan, at his home in Arizona to ask him if he has seen what I hear is JJ. And they check to see if perhaps maybe JJ might have been living with him. Maybe he knows where they're located. According to Colby, this is the first time that he's made aware that Lori had moved with the kids to Idaho. But we find out that, that's not really the case. Colby says after the detectives was there, he calls his mother and she answers. He asks her, what is going on? And Lori says, quote, I got it. I'll take care of it, end quote. And that was it. That's all he got from his mother. In fact, that was the last time that Colby Ryan would talk with his mom, according to Colby. And this interview was done with Justin Lum. And I want to share a few more details on what Colby said about it. So, quote, the day before Thanksgiving, 2 detectives knocked on my door and they asked me, do you know where Tylee is? End quote. I don't think police realized Tylee's missing at that time. I think they're just trying to locate her to ask her questions. So it's not until Colby talked to detectives that they even get an idea that there's a possibility that there's 2 missing kids. And now they're not just searching for JJ. They're also searching for Tylee Ryan, who is 17 years old. To them, she's 17 years old. For those of you that like to say she wasn't 17. At this time, they think that Tylee's okay. She's had her birthday and she's 17 years old. Sometime in between the 27th and the 28th, Melanie says that her and her boyfriend Ian are driving with his kids back home. And at some point, one of the kids say to Ian, don't mess this one up, Dad. It's November 28th of 2019, and Melanie says as soon as she gets back home, one of the first things that she does is she heads to the police department to get the stuff that they took. Melanie says that she goes into the Rexburg Police Department to talk to detectives about getting her stuff, but I hadn't had time to really do the details on this one. She says she walks in and asks the detectives, quote, hey, what's going on? I'm here to get my stuff, end quote. She says that detectives at that point start to ask her questions about her ex-husband, Brandon Boudreau, and ask her why she moves to Idaho. Right in this time period, there's some crazy events about to happen, and it's sudden marriages. They absolutely make no sense unless you are able to think like they do. So a lot of people believe, and I'm going to say this now so I don't forget, they believe that these marriages are happening not because they suddenly love each other, but because they're doing this to kind of make testifying difficult in case anything comes out of this for police. So it has to do with jurisdiction. This is a new law that I've learned about, but yeah, they're trying to use this as a way to lawfully not be able to testify against their own spouse. That's what people believe their reasoning for these marriages are. But according to them, these sudden marriages where they hardly even know each other is because they suddenly realize that they love them so much that they're ready to take these very responsible and, well, big commitments because they just love each other that much. So it's November 29th. Alex Cox, Lori's brother, and her friend Zulema Pastenes, the one that we spoke about earlier in this video, arrives to a chapel called the Chapel of Love, which is in Las Vegas. They are seen eloping alone, according to the security guard. He says the wedding was simple and to the point. In a news article, it says that the wedding only lasted no more than 8 minutes, according to that security guard, and that he was their only witness. He said, quote, "They were very cold. It was business. They just wanted to get in and get out," end quote. They were also there because they were told that there was going to be a big earthquake in the area, and Zulema and Alex were going to stick around to help out, anybody that needed help afterwards. On November 30th, however, there was another couple show up to get married in Las Vegas. And somehow, Ian and Melanie, who were the next to get married, very suddenly, I might add, he has his kids with him. She quickly had found a dress, and he had a nice little suit, have a small service in the Sin City as well. Luckily, they had Alex and Zulema to be witnesses for their wedding. And like I mentioned, this is because there's visions that tell them that an earthquake is to hit soon, and they want to be there to help. That's according to them anyhow. The marriage certificate also shows something very untraditional when Alex and Zulema get married. And I forgot to mention that, guys. I apologize. Usually, it is traditional that the woman takes the man's surname. But it turned out that Alex Cox actually took Zulema's last name. And he is now Mr. Pastenes. Now, at this time, it seems that Ian, his ex-wife, doesn't have a problem with him spending time with his kids or having his kids around Melanie. But we are about to learn that that changes very quickly. Now, I do want to mention the fact there are people out there speculating the reason why Melanie, Ian, Alex, and Zulema all get married so close together. And they believe that Chad and Lori tell them to get married. And maybe it has something to do with the cult. But it just seems to me that it's more they're using that. It makes sense to me that there's a chance that they're using it as an scapegoat of some kind. Now, I want to go over a few things before we go into December. Around this time, investigators learned there's also no sign of Tylee, like we mentioned earlier, that she was living in the townhouse either. They decided to do a more intense investigation, only to learn the last time Tylee was seen was on September 8th, to be exact. That day that she spent time with her mother, Lori Vallow, her brother, JJ, and her questionable uncle, Alex. This new information, I couldn't imagine hearing this, was incredibly scary, but it got even scarier when they tracked Alex's GPS information later, which we'll go over later. So now we're going into December, and we have 2 kids missing, just vanish off the face of the earth. And it's at this point that investigators are starting to realize just how serious this might be. You would think they would have figured this out if they were doing the surveillance like they said they were, but there's never any evidence of them ever doing surveillance. I think they only had 15 to 20 hours worth of surveillance from the beginning when they were supposed to start up until this point, and that's not much. So let's learn a little bit about what Ian writes and documents. He gives us a glimpse into what he knows about this religion, Chad, Lori, and about I think he writes this on his wedding night. Ian writes, on our wedding night, she began to elaborate on the idea that she shared earlier about her children coming to her. And he's talking about those visions. She, referring to Melanie, she explained zombies and her fears about what Chad and Lori stated concerning original spirits being caught in limbo until the body's death. So it's more than clear that before his ex-wife reaches out to him, he's already hearing about this stuff. He knows what's going on. Also during this time, other people within their group, such as David Warwick and a few others, they're spreading fear about massive earthquakes coming to, different areas, Las Vegas area, etc. Now, I'm not certain if Zulema and Alex are using this as an excuse as to why they're hiding from police, saying that they're there in case of an earthquake. But they supposedly are staying there, bracing for the worst. At some point, Ian has big concerns for the safety of his own children. At some point where the detectives reach out to Ian, that's my son Ingrid, guys. They sit with me all day. Anyways, he says he hands his phone over and lets the detective get whatever data that they want. In my opinion and analysis of this case, Ian seems blinded by love because he says he is out to help his wife get out of this mess. He knows that she is a person of interest in the shooting attempt of her ex-husband. So don't let Ian fool you. Anyways, after December, Lori seems to cut ties with most everybody she knows. Melanie says she doesn't hear from Lori. Melanie Gibbs says she doesn't hear from Lori. Melanie Gibbs says she supposedly starts thinking the worst. This is because she gets a phone call from one of Lori's old friends concerned about allegations being told to her by this friend. Now remember, Melanie Gibbs kind of hiding from the police. She's trying to avoid contact with those investigators. But at this point, even a not so smart person can figure out that something bad's fixing to happen and that she could be one of the suspects involved with this. Now, both Melanie Boudreau and Melanie Gibbs claim that they see concerning texts from Kay, when in another breath, Melanie Gibbs says no, she hasn't seen those texts. So whether or not Melanie Gibbs seen any texts that seem to be concerning from Kay, we'll never know, I guess. Kay Woodcock is the grandparent of JJ. They are saying that Kay seems to be sending threatening emails and things like that, but there's no proof of that. The only proof that I can find right now, and something could come out later, is that Kay was trying to just talk with JJ, and Lori refused to let her even see or speak to JJ. Now, there's a fact I want to share in here. I keep forgetting to put it in here. I don't know how many videos, but I'm going to get it in right here. If you don't know, Chad Daybell is a fictional author based off his religion. And he says that he's not very creative, and they're based on a lot of stuff that really happens in his life or, other people he knows. He also is a blogger, and one of his blogs, he shares something that is so concerning. Chad writes that, well, it's in his earlier years, that he got a satisfaction from killing 120 bees. Okay, let me share this with you. One day, that spring, I was slowly walking home across the Memorial Park after school. I saw a honeybee pollinating a dandelion. I peered at it for a moment, then smashed it with my shoe. I spotted another one, then another one. I got a strange satisfaction from it. I kept count, and after about a half an hour, I had killed 120 bees. And we could say that he was just a child and he really didn't know any better. But you can really kind of start to analyze this and figure out what he got from this. But to me, it's a familiar reminder of a guy named Jeffrey Dahmer for me. And I remember his constant fight with his dark side, like many killers that have been caught, and then they later speak and share some of their background in their thoughts. They had thoughts of killing other things and then getting a happiness or joy or an arousal from it. Many of them gaining pleasure through the torture of smaller creatures. And then they just end up graduating over time. Usually, if a child does something like this, they look back and laugh about it because they're kind of ashamed about it. I imagine that Chad would show some kind of empathy later on, but it doesn't appear so. And since he doesn't, instead he shares the fact, really, that he enjoys it, and that's concerned. I would think that if he said something like, quote, "I am curious," end quote, quote, "I didn't realize it," end quote, this would have sent a message that this is a natural child who was kind of learning and curious. But he just didn't. He said, quote, "a strange satisfaction," end quote. Synonyms for satisfaction: pleasure, joy, comfort, fulfillment. Not only that, you got to think, as a blogger and a book writer, author, who is using that term in that way, you can be sure he meant what he said. He made it clear that doing such things made him comfortable, and to me sends a sign that maybe he could be a psychopath or something like that. In all honesty, I kind of feel bad for him, but I think that blog does say a lot into who he is on the darker side of him. And during this time, Chad plays a role in the Church of the Firstborn. This group is separated from the main LDS because they believe that the LDS is not teaching truth, believing that they are ignoring the necessary teachings of John Smith, which involves reincarnation, and doing so put the whole LDS in apostasy and denial for the rejection of these teachings. So yeah, he's kind of going with what he likes, what he desires, and what he believes in. And throwing that little blog in there doesn't help matters. Chad Daybell's autobiography states that he does not believe in reincarnation, but a friend says, quote, "he goes out there, but he doesn't go that far out," end quote, Beckram says. And then he continues, quote, "he's making some pretty strong assertions, but he just knows that there's a line and he's going to stay behind that line," end quote. In other words, he's going to hide what he really feels as well. I mean, we all know that. Now, what we notice as we're going into December and the kids' faces are starting to hit the media, we notice that the group associated with Chad and Lori, they're kind of shutting up. They're not even trying to either help find the children. They're just kind of trying to keep their distance. And to me, this shows me that they aren't very brave, and maybe they're not getting involved because they are, number one, scared for themselves, or they're scared for, and they don't want to hurt Lori and Chad. And in this circumstance, this is very cowardly of them and not good. It's not a good move. It's kind of dark. And what I'm learning also, and not to be disrespectful, I am learning that they are more concerned and panicked over their future than they are for other people. So usually what I learned as a child is in religion, and I was Christian, we grew up to try to be good people and help others. But in the religion that Chad and Lori are following, and the group that they're with, they're only caring about themselves. They are definitely not my type of people. And I've even tried to put Jesus in their shoes, acting the way that they act. And I can tell you right now, doesn't fit. Can you imagine Jesus going through town, strolling around with an ego, selling his love, forgiveness, his revelations. Could you see him strolling past somebody that has missing children and just keeping his mouth shut if he knew just a little bit of something? Those shoes just don't fit. So what I'm trying to tell you is at this point I started having questions about this entire group. So before we move forward, I want to address this issue. Some of you were asking about his near-death experiences. He claims he's had two. The first one, he claims to have crossed into another dimension while cliff jumping as a teenager. He was also hit by a monstrous wave in his early 20s. And it's that episode that caused his veil that separates the mortal life from the spirit world to stay partially open. He often feels as if his foot are in both worlds. Is there any proof that he ever had a near-death experience? Absolutely not. This man to me seems like he can come up with an idea and run with it without any proof whatsoever. And he likes to feel special. What is the saddest part about the Chad Daybell side of this is his children. I feel so bad for them. So we're moving into December. And at this point, Melanie Gibb is starting to panic. She's talking to her boyfriend. She's talking to friends, trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. It's not that hard to figure out. Talk to police, tell them the truth, and help find the kids. But doing the right thing for Melanie Gibb is difficult for her to do. She actually has to talk to several people and friends that are close to her to convince herself that maybe perhaps Lori is bad. After lying to police at the beginning, she comes to her senses at some point and decides to tell them what she knows. So she says, and we're about to go over it, she actually records Lori and Chad. And guys, I have to tell you, there's a lot of people that feel offended whenever you bring up the fact that perhaps Melanie Gibb might have had more to do with this than you would like to think. And then there's those that don't believe she had anything to do with it, that she's a victim. Real quick, I'd like to go over these girls. These are some of our girls that are still missing. I want you to check them out for a second before we continue on. I like to use our bigger stories to push the faces of the girls that are still missing. So we are moving into December, guys. And this is where basically Melanie Gibb, Ian Pulaski, and Melanie Boudreau kind of take over the story. At this point in our timeline, police have already come in, they've done a search warrant, and Chad and Lori have disappeared. No signs of the children, and now Tylee is now considered missing as well. Probably the most interesting part of this part of the video for me is where I realize, and I intend to look deeper into the real estate that this group is buying that is surrounding Chad, and where they admit that many of them are actually following Chad. This just actually adds to the pile of accusations and pushing them more to the truth pile, saying that he might have thought he was a prophet. Around this time also, friends and close relatives and even strangers are starting to catch on to the story. It's hitting the headlines, and a few of Chad's friends have something to say. They're posting online. A few of Chad's friends believe that Chad is going through a custody battle and believe that the kids are safe until they're not. And when we're talking about custody battle, we're talking about Tylee and JJ. They're believing that Chad and Lori are trying to protect the kids from Kay Woodcock, who is actually just trying to check up on JJ, and then later on Tylee as well. So one of those friends, his name is Christopher Perry. His wife is Sue, and both of these guys were defending Chad Daybell tooth and nail. Christopher claimed that everything that was happening and being portrayed through the media was complete lies, and that after speaking with Chad that they felt vindicated. He said that this case had a nasty it was a nasty custody case driven by the grandmother. They don't realize that this is just showing how manipulative and how Chad can lie to people that he supposedly cares about and cares about him. So I don't know if I remember to do an update on this, so I want to go ahead and do it now. It's later on that Chad's friend Christopher says that he apologizes for taking up for him. But when media and stuff try to talk to him about what happened, he refuses to say anything, saying that he doesn't want to interfere with the case. But we kind of hear about the letter that the church sends out to all of its members later, telling them, you know, not to get involved with this. Also, during this time, Julie Rowe she does this video online a little bit later where she's defending Chad and kind of, you know, saying the media are a bunch of liars and manipulators. She says that she had one experience where the media kind of took her and tore at her like a raw piece of meat. And so this is kind of important how Julie Rowe feels at this time about, and also how she supports Chad during this time. Because later on, this friend of Chad changes her mind and comes up with some very interesting accusations and stories. Okay, I want to talk about Kay and Larry Woodcock. We know that they are the grandparents of JJ and that their child, one of their children, had JJ, allegedly was a drug user. The mother was a drug user, so they took the baby on, and later they asked Charles and Lori if they wanted to adopt JJ. Charles and Lori did adopt JJ, and Lori was a stay-at-home mom at the time while Charles was off working. He was traveling a lot of the time, so Lori spent most of the time with the kids. Kay and Larry run a full-time business together and had no other young kids at home to play with JJ, and Kay has also hinted that Larry has some health challenges that may have played a role in the decision to let Lori and Charles adopt JJ. According to some of the resources, and I don't have where I got this from, I apologize, it was a kinship adoption since Charles was biologically JJ's great uncle. According to Kay and Larry, they kept a close relationship with their grandson after the adoption. Also, according to this resource, Kay and Larry often traveled to go visit JJ. They said his grandparents talked to JJ on FaceTime daily. Often he would call them several times a day until August 10th of 2019, and that's when the calls completely stopped. Now, according to Dateline, which is my least favorite source, they talked to Kay Woodcock, and she discovered Lori was in Idaho when she logged into an email account of her late brother and Lori's ex-husband, Charles Vallow. Something in that email triggered Woodcock to contact authorities and police in Rexburg and tried to get them to perform a welfare check on the child, which was November 26th. So remember, on November 26th, Lori is telling the authorities that Kay is kind of threatening her with dates and all kinds of stuff, and telling her friends and, close associates that Kay's seems like she's threatening to take JJ, but there's absolutely no proof of that. In fact, if they were to show the emails to the police, which they should have looked at them, it would have said, they would have seen where it's not like I'm going to kidnap JJ or something. The police were very slow to move on this, and I'm trying to be easy on them as well, because we know that they deal with crazy, cases all the time, and sometimes it's hard to know when something's legit. But on this, you would have thought they would have figured it out. But Kay's acting like this because she hasn't spoken to JJ, according to what the resource I have, since August 10th. So she's dealing with a month of trying to figure out where JJ is, what's going on, and why Lori isn't allowing her to talk to him. Most people are trying to figure out why in the world didn't Lori give JJ to Kay. That would have been that's a good solution. It's the easiest thing to do. A lot of people have speculated as to why she might have not wanted to give the child to Kay, and that's because she was trying to, make Kay suffer. Or she was mad at Charles for not giving her the insurance policy. And then, of course, there's those that believe that that she really believed JJ was a zombie and she was doing him a favor. Regardless, the police and both states had enough information to be able to question whether or not Lori was a good mother. All they had to do was pull up her background, find out where she's from, and be able to kind of sit down if they would just took their time and read the papers. And one of the videos with Charles Vallow, Charles is begging and pleading for the police to help get Lori help. In that video, it's the lieutenant even says that he hasn't had time to read over the paper. And how can you properly care for a case if you don't even know what's going on? You don't have time to read the report. So really, it's disturbing to know of how the system really let these children down. And they're not the only or the last children to be let down by the system. So perhaps we might need to look into the system and make some changes and at least take temporary custody of the children whenever something like this happens immediately. And see if we can look into it deeper before putting the children back into the arms of the people that are there to either love them and prevent them from going to people who want to harm them. There's one thing I've learned since I started doing these videos, and that is that police are very overwhelmed with cases like this. There's a lot of them these days, and they're really not even trained to handle it. So Kay and Larry, they did everything in their power trying to find out if JJ was okay, and Lori just fought them all the way. She wasn't alone. She had a whole group of people that seemed to be conspiring a story that they all seemed to match when they talked to cops. And one of is where the cops actually come out the November 26th. They ask him when is the last time he saw JJ. Chad Daybell says October. Alex says October. Melanie Gibbs says October. They can't just magically know when was the last time they seen JJ when it's the wrong month. JJ was no longer here. I think what people need to start paying attention to is Melanie Boudreau. A lot of people feel that she is one that is just getting away with far too much. And I have to agree with them, and I have to add a name to it, and that would be Ian. Melanie Boudreau is slandering everybody except for Lori. She's the one that's turning the victims into the people who are victimizing. And she knew exactly what she was doing. That was her intentions, and that was very obvious. That right there was what made me not like her personally, based on that alone. She is very aggressive and very bold. And for these people to claim that they are trying to be good people and for God, I find that very hard to believe. So what do you guys think about this? And so I asked you guys to share comments in the community. And I think I must have not written it very clearly because you were asking me to look up certain things instead of tell me how you felt about a certain, area in this case. Sadly, we don't have much. So I'll try it again. So I'll post something in community to say if you would like to drop in your ideas of or how you feel about certain things in this case. Drop just a small comment below that. And if you do that, that's saying that I can use that on a video and we kind of discuss it. Now, before I close out, let's talk about David Warwick. Now, we must remember that David Warwick, his background, like Zulema's, is not squeaky clean. In fact, his is a little bit nasty. He used to be in gangs, and from there, he somehow was led into to God through the LDS, where you can find many videos on YouTube, podcasts, where there are several people sitting there at all of his visions And as he describes those visions, you can hear him asking questions and how intent they are. They are very interested in what he sees and what he has to say. David has dreams of being a leader and famous, just like Chad Daybell, like most of these people involved with this case. They're more about the fame and people loving them, being more fans than family. So I think behind that goody two-shoes of a guy that is there to unite and bring people, to the good side, he's got demons tearing at him 24/7 in the back of his mind. And I feel, this is my opinion, that he's in a struggle constantly, with the devil and the angel. You ever seen that where the devil sits on one shoulder and the angel sits on the other? I can tell you right now that so far during my research, none of them are great examples to anyone. And I highly doubt any of them are chosen prophets of God. But one thing I do feel, and I can't figure out if David done this for him or for Melanie, but I believe he had a lot to do with leading Melanie to talk to the police and tell them more about the truth. Not the complete truth. They never share the complete truth. So that's a big, big step for him, especially considering, what his struggles are in his life. But what's shameful is thinking about the fact that perhaps Melanie had to be persuaded to do the good thing. So we do appreciate that they did come forward and they did testify for the prosecutor as witnesses, and we can expect more from them as trial approaches. But I do have a question. There was something to do with Annie Cushion, which is Joseph Ryan's sister. She's having to hear these accusations against her brother. I've not heard her once stand up and speak up against those allegations. So I am curious to know if perhaps, well, I'm hoping that those accusations weren't true. That would be sad. But, she's been pretty good at not really getting into the darker parts of this. She's just there to try to help the kids. But we'll talk about that at another time, because I think she's going to be able to talk a little bit more later. But we're going to go back to Melanie Gibb. So, guys, I'm not being hard on Melanie Gibb. I'm not trying to be mean to Melanie Gibb. But I can tell you right now that Melanie Gibb knew way more than she's ever led any of us to believe. Melanie Gibb knew about zombies. But when she found out that her teachings and, her and Chad's teachings were hurting other people and that it could be led back to them, what would you do? Are you going to, well, a chicken or a bad person, a dark person, would lie and manipulate. And a good person would say, look, we were teaching about zombies, but I never taught anybody to kill anybody. So, that's just the right thing to do, is to be truthful. And a person that isn't truthful, well, to me, is they're the slime underneath the rock. And so I struggle very, very hard to like Melanie Gibb. I guess, we should be thankful. But I think I would have liked it better if she would have just been more truthful. But at this point, if she was to come out and be truthful, that would not be so good, would it? So now she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. And that's what happens whenever you don't tell the truth. You lie and you manipulate so much that you just back yourself into a corner. My suspicion is those phone calls to friends was not more like, oh, zombies aren't real, are they? It was more like, well, I never believed in zombies. Did you believe in zombies? The whole time. And that's her way of persuading people into believing that they never believed in zombies. That's how they do the whole entire belief system that they have. Lori does it. Chad does it. Melanie Gibb does it. David does it. they say something and then they kind of push them towards it in some way. And you've heard Lori do it on the phone to Melanie Gibb, and you heard Melanie do it to Lori. Guys, I really hit my max here, guys. Anyways, I just hope that in the end that this case will get justice for Tylee, JJ, Charles, Tammy, and possibly even Joseph Ryan. Now we'll be working on December. That one's going to have a lot going on in it as well. Everything I have all the way up until the kids are found has a lot of stuff. I have a lot of details, and that's because I was trying to find where the kids were. And I'm sorry, guys, we got a lot of kids here and I can't hide them. Anyways, guys, love you guys. I hope this video come out pretty well because it's pretty long. I don't have time to double check it. Just stay safe, everybody, and please don't forget about our girls that are still missing. Please share their faces. Love you. See you soon.